Bellissimi, bellissime, marvelous, amazing human specimens, ben trovati. I hope you came here with a good appetite, as today on the menu I will propose to you a rich appetizer, something that I'm sure will please many of you. A platter of toys and gadgets, favorite of certain kind of paranormal investigators. Some of those gadgets may sound legit, but make no mistake, the majority of them, in my opinion, serves no purpose at all when it comes to detect otherworldly presences. I know you're hungry, but before we feast, I kindly ask you to subscribe and like. If, of course, my content pleases you. It will for sure help me out a lot, and for you, lovely, amazing, fantastic folks, it won't cost you a single dime. So, if you can do me this wonderful favor, I would appreciate it a lot. So, thank you, and again, thank you for the wonderful, amazing support. So, lunch is served, let's dig in. I know that many of you are acquainted with ghost investigations. I mean, this type of content has been shown internationally on television for quite some time, since the early 2000s, although, especially in Italy, had a momentarily decline in views, but it seems that, thanks to the aid of YouTube, in the past few years especially, the topic has risen back to popularity. Many different channels were born, and some arose from their ashes, and so on and so forth. Let's admit it, the realm of paranormal has been always interesting since its major boom in the 19th century, and even back then there were a lot of people who wanted to know more about some allegedly paranormal occurrences, so investigators, enthusiasts, and all sorts of paranormal lovers decided to put on their deer stalkers hats and start investigating. Organized groups flourished, and in the autumn of 1881, from a conversation between Edmund Rogers, a journalist, and physicist and parapsychologist William Fletcher Barrett, the first few bricks of the Society for Physical Research were laid. Soon later, a conference was held in January 1882 at the headquarters of the British National Association of Spiritualists, at which the foundation of the society was proposed. Before that, in London, we had the Ghost Club, which it is believed to be the oldest of such organization in the world, though its history has not been continuous. The club, which to this day still investigates mainly ghosts and hauntings, was founded in 1862. Needless to say that this organization was more inclined to believing that phenomena were real, and no scientific method was ever implied to try to understand them, contrary to the case of the SPR, as their approach was more scientific in the matter. My belief is that the Ghost Club was just buying into the sensationalism due to the misunderstanding and misinformations rather than faking all the findings. So for the moment I want to focus my attention on those who had a scientific approach. Don't worry, amici miei, there will be plenty of time for us to discuss about those groups who have nothing, zero to do with scientific method at all. Back on track, as I was saying, the main idea of the SPR was to study those unexplained phenomena and approach these varied problems without prejudice or prepossessions of any kind. In other words, and as I already said, science. Solid basis indeed to start a proper research in the field, and of course many hypotheses were formulated on how to analyze the phenomenon and which tools or instruments were most suitable for the job ahead. This mentality of course propagated even in the course of the 20th century to our current time. But let's not forget that also at the time, people were trying to fake their findings in order to get notoriety and fame. We saw that already when we discussed about the Fox sisters. Therefore, the need of a scientific approach in the matter was indeed welcomed. One popular method of faking evidence was spirit photography, for example, where in a lot of shots, ghostly figures were captured and then presented to the public as real, but we are all aware how these fakes were produced. Hopefully. The most popular one used in the United States involved a so-called glass negative, a glass covered in a light-sensitive emulsion. Said emulsion darkened the parts of a photograph that were the lightest in reality, creating a reverse yet accurate image. Then, a photographer developed the negative and printed the final image. Another famous method was the double exposure. There are plenty of articles online about this specific topic, and it was discussed, debunked, and analyzed multiple times. Sorry to disappoint you, but I have literally nothing more to add on this specific method. Anyway, a brief dive into history. And back in those days, they had to rely more on their observations, as high-tech instruments were not available. Maybe one day we can further discuss on the instruments they used to analyze phenomenon if you're interested, of course. But now I want to focus on the present. We are all here for this after all. Nowadays, what are the methods and tools used by investigators in their research? Well, as to this day, there is no universal acceptance among ghost hunters on what works and what not. I repeat. No universal acceptance, no diktat, nothing set in stones. Anyone, literally anyone, has their personal take on the topic. Bear this in mind for the duration of the video because it is indeed very important. After analyzing all the tools and gadgets, I ended up in making a personal distinction here. Two main categories, if I may. Category number one, tools that can be somehow useful that might work in certain scenarios, and the second category, used mostly by sensationalist channels, my favorite I know, or by people that are ready to believe that anything they see is indeed the work of a spectre, the category of stupid, useless gimmicks. I acknowledge the fact that out there are people who are misinformed about the tools in category number 2, therefore I truly hope that this video will help you to have a more clear view on the matter. Let's start with category number 1. Let's go! Woohoo! We have video cameras with infrared, night vision mode and all sorts of things. I still ask myself why a ghost should leave a thermal imprint and what are the rules behind it, but let's leave it be. These cameras can be quite useful when you are exploring dark areas, but please be mindful that the constant movement of your eyes between a light source, in this case the screen, and the dark environment ahead can mess up with your eyesight to the point that you might see dark spots in your field of vision. And for the most inclined to believe, dark spot equal dark figures equal a presence. Fortunately, in the hands of professionals, such risk is reduced to the minimum. Number 2. Parabolic microphones. They can catch sound sources ahead of you, and the more the tool is sophisticated, the likely you are to expand the range of the possible sound source, most likely caused by any sort of environmental possible source, but again, can be quite useful also to debunk and exclude natural explanations, especially in abandoned buildings. Numero 3. PIR, also known as passive infrared sensor. Useful, but they can be easily triggered by bugs and ball made of dust and fur. You know, the one that you may find in households and especially prominent in abandoned buildings. Numero 4. CCTV cameras. Pretty darn useful, especially if you can connect them to a laptop and have someone monitor the whole situation. Now, a subcategory of this one which is based on hypotheses, myths, and assumptions in which ghosts are energy, and as energy you can trace them via these instruments. If you're inclined to believe these things, of course I am not, or at least there is no bloody evidence that can corroborate this claim, not to this day, but let's keep an open mind, you never know. Number 5. The K2, the EMF meter capable of detecting electromagnetic fields, used by electricians in order to check the wirings and see if everything is fine around your house. Used also by builders in case they need to take down a wall and avoid hitting and destroying your electric wirings. These are the two most common applications of this particular piece of equipment. On this particular topic, World of Mr. Grey released a very interesting video in which he discusses the origin of this instrument and how it became prominent in ghost huntings. He gave a brief demonstration on how roughly the K2 works, testing it around his house where no claims of hauntings has ever been made. So do me and him a huge favor, check out his video for more information. You won't be disappointed, trust me. What I personally think? Well, considering that the majority of ghost hunters buy the cheapest version of this device, and it is famous for giving tons and tons of false positives thanks to faulty wiring, appliances, and yes, even other ghost hunting equipment give a huge contribution, not to mention the cameras. If you keep the K2 too close to the camera, it will give you a false positive as well. Jesus! In any case, I think that it is not that useful at all, or at least can be if used properly. If you are willing to spend, there are more expensive versions of this thing, and of course, as you can see here, nowhere in the description it's written used in ghost hunts. Plus, in order to properly use those things, they need to be calibrated, tested, and for a proper use, as already stated, they need to stay away from any other electronic devices, as shown in this video from the Ghost Hunters team, in which they approach the readings in the most secure, scientifically correct possible way, and you may, as they did in this short clip, find something unexplained, and not unexplainable by the way. Let's use the proper term, porca miseria miseriaccia. Let's move on. Numero 6. Thermometers, another overused instrument. Is it useful? Well, if you register a cold spot of 20 degrees less, yes. And by that I mean, let's pretend you are investigating a house and inside of it you have a constant temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. At a certain point you reach an area where the temperature drops to 15 degrees or 5 degrees and no windows or AC are in the vicinity to pollute the readings. In that case, yes, it can be useful indeed. Bear in mind, for the majority of cases, the difference in temperature are minimal, plus consider that said differences in a place are common. If you move inside the place you are investigating, you will inevitably move pockets of air, cold and hot, hence the difference in readings. Totally normal. As you may or may have not noticed, my opinions comes from a variety of sources. Some are factual, some are purely based on my personal views and use of the tools. But I assure you, I am no expert. I do informative content indeed, but I try to lean more towards the satirical side of it. Therefore, like many others, I rely and listen to the most educated opinion of the experts. One of these experts is Kenny Biddle. The guy is extremely knowledgeable when it comes to ghost hunting equipment, and he has a channel where he informs the audience about all the instruments he can get his hands on, taking them apart, testing them, and try to give the most educated opinions on them. An amazing friend of mine suggested me his channel and I was hooked. I strongly encourage you to watch his content, and if you like to know more, please subscribe to his channel. And now, time for category number 2, the gimmicks. I don't know if I want to cry, laugh or cringe, or do all three at the same time. Let's get this over with. Guys, a personal note. I feel like the poet Dante Alighieri in the Divina Commedia, but in this specific case, instead of entering from hell, go through purgatory and finally reach the heavens, I'm walking in the opposite direction, from the good to the absolute worst. Thank you for accompanying me, I appreciate it. Numero 1. EVP detectors. We start strong, please. 2 words, basically useless. The main thing is that they skip from frequency to frequency and in a very fast manner, and from time to time you can catch words which comes from radio stations and most of the time songs. Sometimes they are just noises that, thanks to the phenomenon known as pareidolia, the tendency for perception to impose a meaningful interpretation on a nebulous stimulus, usually visual, in this case auditory, so that one detects an object, pattern, or meaning where there is none. We interpret them as something coherent like a word, a name, or a sentence. This particular tool was multiple times debunked by many other YouTubers and content creators. Number 2, even literally number 2, phone, tablets, apps, and ITC word generators. Come on guys, we are in the realm of the absurd here. Many investigators use these tools in their investigation. The most honest will tell you that they are trying to spice things up a bit, but the sensationalist ones, they will just take whatever word they hear as a sign of the presence. You wanna know what they do? They generate words with a random pattern, and most often the spooky effect is caused by the investigators themselves forcing interpretation of the word in relation of what they believe or what is the most useful for them in that specific context, like the red boot ritual I talked about, hey? And if you check the prices for the ITC generators, be ready for a big surprise. 400 quids for an algorithm machine that spew out random words? You must be freaking insane, per piacere. For that amount you can buy tons of books, almost a PlayStation 5 digital edition console, you can treat yourself at the spa, or have an amazing night out with friends. Well, an incredibly amazing night with friends. Numero 3. Ouija boards. I've already talked about this in the video here, but if you wanna know more, please click the video, the link is in the description. Few words, fakery, sensationalism, and Ideomotor effect. Several experiments were done in order to prove that this piece of wood does not work. Nothing to add. And let's move on. Number 4. Dowsing rods. Oh my god! The dowsing rods, basically something that have been used in the art of I can find the water thanks to my power and some sticks, also known as rhabdomancy. On this topic I found a very interesting video from our beloved James Randi, link in the description, in which he explains how these hell-shaped rods can be easily influenced by the users, willingly or by the Ideomotor effect. Randi was challenged by these gentlemen, ready to show his skills and how these things are absolutely working like a charm. Well, sorry to break it to you guys, but these things do not work, and please, believers of this method, don't hit me with the usual explanation that ghosts are energy made of electricity and they can interact with the metal, because you cannot prove it and there are no evidence for this. Dannazione! Numero 5. Using extremely light objects as proof of ghost activities. This trope has been used quite a while around many sensationalist channels, and the majority chose to use a table tennis ball that weighs 2.5 grams. And it's hollow inside. Apparently the ghost cannot lift more than 2.5 grams, despite some reports of heavier objects being thrown around by entities. Oh, let's not forget the openings of windows and doors. Andiamo bene, andiamo. This thing can be easily influenced by anything. Did you see that? It moved, therefore ghosts. Out of curiosity, let's rewatch it, but this time with the audio on. How strange that in the moment that the sound and vibration are created, the ball moves. On this specific topic, Voxpouli, an Italian YouTuber, made a nice explicative video on how the sound and vibration can actually make something so light move to its own accord apparently. I recommend to check the video by yourself. The experiment is roughly around minute 13. The link of the video, as always, is in my description, so please check it out. And Voxpouli, if you're watching this, voglio tu si gross. Of course, I am not accusing these guys in the video that they are faking it, but I rather think that they jumped too early to the conclusion that the ghost did that instead of finding another possible natural explanation. Not very scientific at all, guys. No. Last but not least, number 6, mediums. Not much to say about it. Please don't use them because this is stupid on so many levels that I prefer to eat a full pineapple pizza with bacon and ketchup instead of hearing a person try to pretend to talk with a spirit. We have countless of examples of these charlatans. They have been debunked, and again debunked, so please, no mediums, thank you. So this is more or less what I have for you on the topic. Being a good investigator, such as the GHT, or others such as Mythos Paranormal, Beardo Gets Scared, Ghost on a Trend, etc., it's kind of difficult because the prices for professional equipment is prohibitive, very prohibitive. Not to mention that you may encounter sites that sells tools at very cheap price, but those things are basically junk. And if you truly wish to pursue this hobby, please always keep in mind the following. Remember also that this is my personal take, my personal opinion, okay? To this day, no evidence were found by using these tools. I mean the useful one and the ones that maybe can be proven useful. For sure not the gimmicks. There is no authority in the field. Anyone can be a ghost hunter as long as this person is able to recognize natural phenomenon and doesn't think that all that is happening around them is a ghost activity. Don't be stupid and avoid abandoned buildings. The real danger there can be caused by structural environment or real people/wildlife. In some cases, the fact that the building is abandoned doesn't mean that it is not property of someone else. The majority of hauntings come from legends, myths, and in modern time, media and TV program. Make sure before heading out and investigate to double and triple check all the claims by searching for articles, books, and note down everything. Most of the time, you will discover that the haunted location is not haunted at all, such as in the case of Montebello Castle and the hauntings of the little girl known by locals as Azzurrina. We will talk about it in the future. Be cautious and always challenge your discoveries because remember, the real investigators are also the first people who are able to debunk themselves. Oof, we managed to reach the end of the video. It was a long one, so thank you for staying with me. And as you figure it out, that's all for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video and please let me know what you think in the comment. Arrivederci alla prossima, mia bellissima gente. Ciao!